Welcome guys and gals to another discussion video, and today we're going to be talking about more DCU news, and that is about the Swamp Thing movie. I have done another video discussing all of the projects that were announced that are going to be in the DCU Chapter 1 Gods and Monsters, at least, well, it's not the whole plan yet, but it's part of it. And now I'm going through them all separately to go more in depth with each of these projects. So in this one, we're going to be talking about the Swamp Thing movie. Now, I feel like this is one that's kind of under the radar. It doesn't really seem like too many people are talking about it. But in my opinion, I think this is actually a really good thing. And that is because the main topic that will be discussed in this is a project, the Swamp Thing movie, that can definitely explore the darkness and the horror of the DCU. Because I talked about this in another video that I'm really hoping what they do, and it looks like they're going to do this, is the DCU is going to have a variety of tones. I don't want every movie to feel like an action blockbuster, because Booster Gold, that's a comedy. Superman, I guess that's the action adventure, but like this, for example, Swamp Thing movie, that's just straight up horror. They even said it's going to be a horror movie, and hopefully they keep to their word, because we've seen sometimes where they don't keep to their word, and I believe them. It's definitely a character that can go the full horror route, and yeah, the main topic that will be discussed is how Swamp Thing can really delve into the darkness and the horror of the DCU. Because even though James Gunn said that it's going to be very tonally different than the rest of the DCU, which, you know, I really hope so, because that gets me really excited, it's still connected to it. So Swamp Thing is a very interesting character. Just a quick history for those who don't know who Swamp Thing is. There are some different iterations, but the most common to my recollection is Alec Holland. And Alec Holland is a scientist who's like working on some kind of medicine or whatever. They're in the swamp or whatever, and then he gets shot by either his partner or just some random criminal. I don't remember exactly. And he's, dead supposedly, right? But then the swamp around him, it like weaves its way into his body, and then it forms Swamp Thing. So he basically loses his human body, and he becomes this creature, the Swamp Thing. So this is definitely one where there's probably going to be some body horror elements involved, I can only imagine. Now, my hope, one of my biggest hopes in regards to this movie is its practical effects. Please, I am begging you, be practical effects. I don't want a CGI Swamp Thing. I mean, I can understand in certain moments maybe you would use CGI, but please, for the most part, be practical. Because there was a TV show that they did on the DC Universe app when that was a thing, not a thing anymore. But when that was a thing, there was a TV show, and it was pretty good, and it was practical effects, and it looked awesome. And I hope they go practical effects. And now, as of recently, there have been discussions of James Mangold being in talks to direct it. I think that would be fantastic. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, what about Guillermo del Toro? That would be another obvious fantastic choice, but we don't know yet. Obviously, it's just early discussions, and we're not going to know for a while. But James Mangold, for those who don't know, he did direct Logan, if you've seen that. Of course, the Wolverine movie, arguably one of the best comic book movies out there. So, of course, I'm down for James Mangold. He makes really good movies. And why I think this can explore the darkness and the horror of the DCU, because just in general, it's a very dark character. Like, it's going to be about humanity and things like that, and him losing that, wanting to become Alec Holland again, even though that's not going to happen. But it also delves into like the mystical aspect of the DCU a little bit, and that gets me excited. So for those who don't know, Swamp Thing connects to the Green or whatever, and there's also another character, Poison Ivy. Most likely won't connect to her, but she's also another character that connects to the Green. And it's has some mystical aspects to it. And now what gets me really excited is, I'm not saying they're going to do this, but Swamp Thing could lead to a Justice League Dark situation. And that's going to get even more into the darkness and things like that, because then that brings in characters like Constantine, who, it's like, even though I know there's the Keanu Reeves sequel that's going to happen, I still want to see a different version of Constantine, and hopefully that happens. But no guarantee. But then there's also people like Zatanna, which I really hope is in the DCU. That is a character that really should be utilized. And then like Dead Man, people like that. And it could really delve into the mystical, magical elements of the DCU and just the full horror aspect, because those characters, especially when they are part of the Justice League Dark, they usually investigate and deal with the really dark and just disturbing stuff in the DC universe. Because like the main Justice League, for example, they'll deal with the usual big threats that everyone knows, like whether it's Darkseid, Starro, Mongol, whatever. But these are the people that are going to be dealing with like demons and things like that. So I really hope that is the route that they go with Swamp Thing. I hope it does connect to those characters. I mean, I can understand if they don't connect to Constantine, since it maybe would add some confusion with Keanu Reeves. But I would really hope we see or hear about Zatanna or Deadman, at least those two for sure. But this is definitely a project where it's going to be a full-on horror. I have no doubts. I'm sure it'll be violent. I'm sure there will definitely be a lot of blood, be some body horror elements to it. And once again, I hope it's all practical effects. Well, maybe not all, but most of it is. Once again, I can understand in some instances they would need CGI when it comes to him like controlling the green, using the plants around him to, if he kills people. I'm sure that'll be CGI. But other than that, I just hope when he's in his normal form that it's practical, because that will just make it even better. And I'm very curious to see how much horror they delve into this movie, because I think it can really go all in, because it's definitely one of those properties that you can go really, really dark. And for those who don't know, one of the most popular runs of Swamp Thing was done by Alan Moore. And of course, Alan Moore is well known for doing some dark stuff, whether it's something like Watchmen or The Killing Joke, stories like that. So he's a very well-known and great writer. And say what you want about some of the other things he talks about, but when it comes to comics, he's a very well-known and respected person. So I do really hope that this does delve into the darkness and the horror of the DC universe, and I'm sure it will. I don't know if it's going to connect so much to some of the more demon-esque characters of the DCU. Like, I'm just throwing this out there as an example. I'm not saying there's any shot of this happening, but like Trigon, for example, that's a full demon character. It's like probably highly unlikely that happens. They would probably connect more to some magical characters like Felix Faust or somebody like that, but we'll see. But I am very excited to see where this goes, because this one is one of the ones that when I first heard about it, I was like, at first I was like, I'm not too sure. But then the more I heard about it, I'm like, this could work really, really well. And especially when they said it's going to be like tonally different from the rest of the DCU, and it's going to be like full-on horror and whatnot, and especially who's in talks to direct it. I think so far everything is shaping up really well for the Swamp Thing project, and that gets me really excited, especially given that it could connect to the Justice League Dark characters, which I hope it does, because I would love to see Constantine, Zatanna, Deadman, amongst others. I would love to see all of those in the House of Mystery and all that fun stuff, because it's a very fun property to use, and I hope they do utilize it. So, of course, what do you think of the Swamp Thing project? Do you think it's going to delve into the darkness and the horror of the DCU? Let me know in the comments below, and of course, as always, I'd love to see you all next time.
You send shivers up